What is going on, everyone? I want to share with you some vinyl records that I've accumulated over the last year. I think last summer was the last time I did a vinyl record video. So anyway, let's get started. Good morning, everyone. I have my coffee in my Waffle House cup. Anyway, let me start out. I just got this in the mail today. I have a Jimi Hendrix Experience, Are You Experienced album. Came out in the early 70s. Because of course Jimi Hendrix, died in 1970. So anyway, still cool to have this record though. I'm really happy about that. I have a first pressing Mothers of Invention Freakout album from 1966. Now, I'm a huge Frank Zappa fan, and anything Frank Zappa does is worth having. He's an awesome guitarist, awesome composer as well. He's put great bands. He always knew how to put good bands together. He always found the best musicians, and he did great jobs. Put a lot of albums. I'm actually reading a book on him, and it talks about him, living in Laurel Canyon and Studio Z, which was his studio in Los Angeles, that a lot of good music was recorded back in the day. So, really, really cool to have. I have a couple GG, let me put down the coffee. I have a couple GG Allin 7-inches. I have one GG Allin the Carolina Shit Kickers and one with the GG Allin and the Disappointments. This, obviously GG Allin, if you know anything about him, was a rebel in rock and roll and punk rock. He was out there. He did a lot of gross things. I'd say he kind of made a lot of people sick with some of the antics he did on stage. He was one of those guys that you liked him or you didn't. He does have a few catchy songs that I like. Die When You Die is a pretty good song. He did a cover of a Charles Manson song, a Garbage Dump. He covered that. Actually, Todd Phillips, who directed the Hangover films and the Joker that just came out with Joaquin Phoenix, he did the first project he ever did was a documentary on GG Allin. And I want to say it came out in 93, 94. And I can't remember the name of the documentary, but it's like awesome documentary. It was, critics, gave it, many critics gave it good publicity. So anyway, I was glad. I do have those. I have a 7-inch Kurt Cobain. This is from the Montage of Heck movie, which is a documentary, and this is the single cover of And I Love Her. It was a Beatles cover that he did, and it also has Sappy, which was one of their B-sides, and this is a demo of Sappy on there, and that was Kurt Cobain's art on there. He was also an artist. He did a lot of cool art in his lifetime. This is Allman Brothers live. Wipe the Windows, Check the Oil, Dollar Gas from '74. Sadly, Duane Allman had passed in '71, a few years prior to this, so he's not on it. He would have been killed in his motorcycle accident. Allin self-portrait album. I found this for a pretty good price in a Greensboro vinyl shop. I'm sure you remember, if you grew up in the 80s, the Tubes. They had that song, She's a Beauty. Well, in the video, the kid in it was one of the Arquette siblings. He was the one being pushed around in the carnival in that cart, and he ended up being the one who had the sex change later on, and then ended up passing away from AIDS related complications a few years back. But He became Alexis Arquette, but I'm not sure what his name was. He was in that movie, that horror, Stephen King film, Sometimes They Come Back. He was one of the greasers with the leather coats. He was one of the villains, one of the demon greasers, I guess you could say. But but he was in that. But later on, he had the sex change, but anyway, that song isn't on this album. I got this for like $4, you know, and I think Volume in downtown Hillsboro, actually. I bought a few albums in there. Yeah, it's a pretty cool little bar / vinyl shop, so you can kind of drink beer as you're sifting through vinyl. This is Jim Carroll, the Jim Carroll band, Dry Dreams. Now, Jim Carroll was portrayed by Leonardo DiCaprio in Basketball Diaries. He was also a musician and a poet. He wrote the book Basketball Diaries is really good. Here's a picture of him on the back. He was a basketball star too in the 60s in high school, but he got into heroin real bad and then got into poetry and music, and then just kind of left basketball altogether. He was a big star and actually could have probably, you know, maybe played NBA ball if he had kept his nose clean. But anyway, that's how it went. And here's this is a first pressing of Locust Abortion Technician by the Buttle Surfers from 1987. I got to see Merle Haggard a couple years before he passed, so this is his Big City album. I've always been a big Hag fan. Let's see, this is all something I wanted to show you. Oh crap, this is falling apart. When I moved to my first apartment in the early 2000s, a guy was moving out and he was having a yard sale, and he had a bunch of albums for $1 a piece. So I bought this and a ZZ Top album, but this is the Street Survivors album. It's in horrible condition, but you know, I had heard that a lot of these were recalled because of the flames, you know, because of the plane crash. And it looks, especially that guy, it looks like he's engulfed in flames, and I think that bothered some people. So, I always liked his t-shirt, My Grass is Blue. You know, I got a bunch of these big Ziploc bags that are perfect for, you know, records that you want to keep safe. Here's another Mothers of Invention Live 71, The Mothers. But yeah, that's a Black Flag, Wasted Again album. Here's a band I found called Nightwing. I'm trying to go through these fast. Some of them I'll talk more, you know, a little more intensely on. Sometimes I'll find obscure, you know, vinyl punk rock bands like 10 Foot Faces. I don't know much about them. I've tried to look into them, and there's some pictures of them on the back. Here is a Black Sabbath first pressing of Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. Awesome. I was glad to get that for a decent price. This is I bought this in downtown Graham at a record shop. It's also a bar. I don't know the name of it, but it's right next to the old theater. This is 20th anniversary of the Smashing Pumpkins Gish album. Have you ever? I don't know if you've seen Dumb and Dumber. It's a cult classic from the '90s. Jim Carrey, Jeff Daniels, the Gigolo Ants. They were the band that did the song "Where I Find My Heaven." Remember the scene where they're on the scooter and they make it all the way to Aspen on that crappy little scooter? Well, they were the ones who wrote that song. But that song isn't on this album because this is one of their 1980. This is an '88 album. Everybody Happy, and as you can see on the back, they're really 80s looking on there, huh? I got to see Chris Christopherson at Bonnaroo Festival in 2010, and this is his Jesus Was a Capricorn album. I was really glad to get to see him. That was really awesome. So here's a Ray Charles Greatest Hits. That's pretty old. Here's another obscure band, the Vels, the Velocity, kind of cool little pop art on there. I've always loved Cat Stevens. This is the Teaser and the Firecat album. My buddy Jeff Feemster gave this to me before he moved to Detroit. Him and his wife used to own a bar here near where I live, near the Chapel Hill area. We've been talking about that a little. I got this Lee Ritenour album, and this guy can shred. He's an awesome musician. He's an awesome guitarist. There's a guitar floating at sea. It's like kind of cool, huh? Captain Fingers album. So if you ever, there's a picture of him on the back. This is a 1977 album. So found another band called the Weather Prophets. I found this for pretty cheap. The Leaving Trains. They're a punk rock band from the 80s, and the lead singer has a connection to Nirvana. Well, more or less Courtney Love. James Moreland, who passed away. His nickname was Falling James. Here's the backside. Anyway, James Moreland and Courtney Love were married in the late 80s for a short, like 6 months. The marriage didn't last long at all. But this is their Kill Tunes album. I don't know why. Sometimes the corners are cut on vinyl. And I always wondered why that is. I've bought a lot of used ones, a few that have that, and it always irritates me. Because you don't want your vinyl cut. You can help it. Anything by Dinosaur Jr. and Jay Mascis is worth having. This is Dinosaur Jr.'s I Bet on Sky album. Pretty cool artwork. Jay Mascis is a phenomenal guitar player. Here's a punk rock band called the Hard-Ons. They're from the 80s. I have Honky Tonkin' by Hank Williams. This is an old album from the 60s. I wanted to show you this. I lucked up. I found this at School Kids Records in Chapel Hill. Elizabeth Cotten was from Carroll, North Carolina. She was a blues folk musician. She wrote a song called Freight Train because growing up as a little girl near the Carroll train station, Carroll Depot, she could hear the train going, blowing at night, and of course it inspired her to write Freight Train. But I found this for, actually it has the ticket on there. Her song Freight Train later was covered by Peter, Paul, and Mary. And one of her songs was covered by the Grateful Dead later on. I don't remember which song. But nevertheless, this is This is hard to find, so I was really glad to find this. I've looked for it even on eBay, just wondering if it exists, and I couldn't find it. From time to time, they may pop up. She was an awesome guitarist, though, check her out sometime if you ever get a chance. She's really interesting life. She was born in the late 1800s and lived almost to the late 1900s. She was almost 100 when she passed. So I think she lived to be about 94, 95 years of age. But she was, I think she may have even played at the White House. I mean, she was an accomplished musician. I thank you so much for joining me, and I was happy to share these with you. And from time to time, I'll make some more. If you're a vinyl music fan like me, I like, everybody's different. Some people like having physical media. Some people don't like the clutter. We all, to each his own, I say. I like being able to open up a CD or an album and look who the guitarist was, or, when an album was made, look at the artwork, whatever, just, between that and my books and a few movies, I'm kind of proud of my little library. But Anyway, thank you, and I will see you soon.